go. Let's do this thing. Okay. Hey, this is Nick with additional crew providing a quick little review of Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Now, because The Mummy is still in theaters and pretty new, I'm going to provide something of a review mullet. Spoiler free in the front, party in the back. If you're curious how the movie is but plan on watching it, just check out the beginning. I'll let you know when the spoilers are going to be beginning. And, of course, if you want the shorter reviews and you like these things, you want to see more of them, subscribe, like, comment. When I see what numbers are coming from where, it helps me decide what to keep going for. I don't ask that often, but I have to ask at some point. With that said, let's dive in. The Mummy is Lee Cronin's most recent film, following up Evil Dead Rise in tones and theme, and basically in every way except for franchise name. This is absolutely worth a watch if your favorite thing about the Evil Dead movies is the zany action and willingness to be brutal. It is, however, a skip if you want a competent story, interesting characters, or a strong, deeper message. It is shot well and has definite peak moments, but it is not revolutionary, and it lacks a bit of the heart, I think, that it would need to be considered a cult classic. Now, to the spoilers. If you haven't seen the film yet, this is where I say take your off ramp. Come on back when you've seen it. Check it out, see if we agree. So, Lee Cronin's The Mummy presents the story of the Cannons and lost their daughter while living in Cairo. The film takes a bit of time to acquaint you with a few aspects of the film. You see their family dynamics prior to loss, the family that is in charge of guarding the mysterious black sarcophagus, and the true violence and power of the evil when the most sympathetic character in the film dies with a hook through the chin. In a brutal way, unfortunate, and probably the only person everyone can agree at the very end is someone you might like for a minute. Past that, we are forced to deal with the awful thought of losing a child in a foreign country. Moving on, finding happiness, and then delving back in when the child is found. What you imagine would be a pretty profoundly happy moment, it turns into something horrific when the doctors let a catatonic, dirty, unkempt, frankly, physically brutalized little young child go home because all she needs is some time at home. I mean, look, I'll be real. This movie has plot holes so big that you could bury a pharaoh in them. There are moments where you just have to be willing to completely turn off your sense of disbelief. You can't connect with it in the way that like you would on a movie that wants to seem that seems as serious as it's trying to take itself in the beginning. On one hand, this isn't so bad. I mean, you've got some of the more zany and over the top action and gore scenes that Evil Dead is known for. And like Evil Dead, if you go into that expecting a lot of logic or a lot of people to make a lot of sense, then you're going to be disappointed, right? So maybe that's what you should just go in with this thinking. But on the other hand, the movie's set up on a frankly indescribably awful theme of losing a child and then being reunited years later with someone that is completely different because of what happened to them. Think about the real world applications of this theme. We're talking kidnappings, addiction, self-harm. I mean, just trafficking, all of this stuff, so on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It seems kind of unwise to just assume the viewers list will do the favor of turning off their brain to any sort of logic. Look, here, let me give you some points to make this really clear. First, the aforementioned doctor letting the daughter leave just because her vitals seem fine. They don't seem to care that her skin is covered in some strange writing. She's got like some weird adhesive stuff all over that peels off if you try really hard. I mean, and if they didn't know, then what are these doctors actually doing, right? The plane ride from Egypt back to the USA. So, after they get her out of the hospital and they have to go to the USA, didn't we just watch a plane crash because it was trying to transport her out of the area that they were in? Is the only difference here the tranquilizer? Is the tranquilizer really that good? I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. Why are the parents dragging her wheelchair up the stairs? Why not simply carry her and the wheelchair separately? There are two of them. She's not that big. And I mean, we didn't get any backstory on why Charlie can't carry a little girl. You have to assume he can. How likely is it that the university near Charlie just happens to have a professor that can read an ancient Egyptian language from 3000 BC, especially when it's presented blurry, especially when it's presented on, I want to say the skin, the adhesive, the bandage. I don't know what the heck it is. The ceremonial wrap, blurry, overlapped on itself. And he's so good at it that he can read it from a Polaroid picture. And he is a professor in New Mexico. That just the coincidence and serendipity is just a little bit too much for me. Funeral scene. Why does it end without any repercussions towards the family? I mean, this happens in so many scenes in this film. Something crazy happens, something insane happens, and then it just ends, and we go back to kind of like, okay, here's a lady, or here's a little girl in her room. She definitely doesn't look right, but well, she's still family, so we still care about her. The funeral scene brings in other people from outside the house, right? It's like a big moment where, okay, you can make a lot of sense out of this, and you can have people who come in and go, hey, this isn't right. I know what you're trying to do, but it's not right. And yet the scene just ends. We don't see any fallout. We don't see any repercussions. We don't even see people screaming and running out of the house. The scene ending where it does makes just no sense to me in a movie with a 2-hour long runtime. Okay, if you're making the Nazaranian, which is the name of the monster, in case you don't remember, if you're making the Nazaranian move from one body to the next, and then when it moves off of the first body, it just brings the person back in good shape. Why was the best way to deal with it waiting until someone's body was literally almost dead? Like, what is the purpose here? You don't want to just like have like a set of people that you all get into this group, and then you're like, hey, so everyone, you have 2 years of servitude to this thing, and then we'll give it back up to the next person. The next person has 2 years of servitude. I mean, maybe I'm asking a lot for ancient, like, society logic, but they were smart enough to figure out how to do the ceremonial wraps and all the writings on the walls. So like, what am I? This just can't be the easiest way. Why do the Egyptian police and parents suck at searching for perpetrators? The letter was in the trunk the whole time that implicated Layla's family, with details only known to the family. I guess the cops not being that good at their job isn't that big of a stretch of the imagination, really. How did Detective Dahlia pull a scorpion out of her throat? Finger it, and then remember the lines of an ancient Egyptian curse spell. I mean, whatever the heck that thing is called, from an old VHS tape. I mean, that's a crazy feat for someone who just fell down the stairs, had their head bonked a whole bunch of times, and getting up and seeing some of the most easily traumatic stuff they've ever seen. So Dahlia is a hero for sure, but also like it doesn't track that she remembered all the lines from the VHS tape that well. That's insane. Why does Charlie suddenly know Morse code well enough to tap it through a box without a cheat sheet and through an ancient evil possession? We just saw him look at a Morse cheat sheet just to, figure out the word Layla. How's he figuring it out when he's in the box? Is she teaching it? Never mind. This isn't a big one. This is just a little one. Okay. And then finally, why does the Nazaranian wait to do anything with Charlie before they get to the cell of the kidnapper? How do they get Charlie on the plane all the way back to Cairo? How did the kidnapper survive the shooting when way out in the middle of nowhere? Why did the doctors let in an American nurse with a syringe full of sedative? That final scene, just why to the whole final scene? You did not need to add that final scene to make it feel happy. The final scene was just garbage to the logic of the whole universe we're in. Like, if this is set in the same universe as Evil Dead, no wonder this keeps happening. That's a lot. I mean, really, it's too much. I mean, I know I came to see a movie about an Egyptian monster that is frequently seen wrapped in toilet paper, but I have standards. Maybe, I think. Anyway, the story and plot hardly make any real sense. Every time they attempt to emotionally connect or make something deeper, they cut away too quick. They just leave you feeling like all of the characters need some deep growth before they're ready to handle any situation in the real world. I mean, what is it though? I can fix her. But it can't be all that bad, right? It can't. There are a handful of scenes that do provide the splatter punk sense of gore and craziness that the audience came for. A few highlights for me include the rosary being used as a noose. Just the way it was shot reminded me of the old Evil Dead films. I would call it Raimi-esque. The whole funeral scene prior to the abrupt ending was fantastic. Katie crawling on the ceiling's walls. Love that. Wonderful. Maud pulling all of her teeth out and aspirating on the eggs. Brilliant. I mean, how can you make the most gag-inducing scene in the whole movie? Really the one that's only just kind of kids being gross. I mean, yeah, it's blood. Kids are gross. If you don't have a kid around that age, they're gross. They're gross people. And it's so funny. The old woman eating the eggs was also probably the closest to the real gag moment of the movie we had. And the drinking of embalming fluids was wild. I mean, just that funeral scene, besides ending too early, was phenomenal. I think that funeral scene was the one moment in this whole entire movie where I thought everything is clicking on all cylinders right now. keep this going, and then it just ends it kind of unceremoniously. The old imagery in the books pretty cool. That was some really cool stuff. There were a lot of little details that went well, and overall, I would say like if you went into the film just wanting a fun time, you probably left fairly satisfied. It did drag quite a lot in the middle. 2 hours was too long of a runtime for this. I mean, let's be real. Watching Dad investigate just wasn't that entertaining of a use of time, but it didn't. It wasn't like it was so egregious that it totally destroyed the pacing. Watching Dad investigate just wasn't that entertaining a use of time, but it wasn't so egregious that it totally destroyed the pacing. Acting wasn't particularly good. And when the parents are on the sofa, when they're watching the VHS tape that the detective brings to them, and they're it's some really heavy stuff that they're watching, especially with their daughter prior to whatever's happening with her right now. Um, I really found Charlie's body posture and mannerisms quite funny. They didn't really fit the scene to me. He kind of the way he was leaning on his wife. Just something about the physical acting in that particular scene was off for me, and it was a really horrific scene overall. If you think about the tone, um, and I feel like they ended up getting kind of the opposite of what they might have intended to do there. Someone hurt. Also, the delivery that Laia Costa has when she delivers the line "I can fix her," that was either supposed to be funny or it was just comedically poorly acted. I can't really tell which one was which. But it's not really that I think anyone did terrible per se. The emotional depth just wasn't really allowed to exist. I will say I like Veronica Falcone as the religious grandma. I thought her character was well designed and a particularly fun addition to the film. Letting her come back as a deadite, I mean, a zombie or no, I guess Deadeye. It was an enlightened choice. Set design for the most part was pretty good. I enjoyed the cool black pyramid. I enjoyed the inside of the cool black pyramid. Heck, I enjoyed the colors of the nectarine orchard outside. The cannon's house, very nice. And the wood, minus the vomit rot, was something I can only dream of. I mean, they had a neat classroom. They had a neat professor study. Really, for the most part, everything looked good. I'm not a huge fan of the out of focus used as a horror technique, but it feels on brand. And Lee Cronin will almost always certainly use people's heads as fun framing devices. I'm lacking the exact words to describe what I'm seeing, but if you watch the film, I'll think you notice how during conversation heads look a little different here compared to other horror films. Effects were all also pretty well done. The peeling skin on Katie got me to cringe a few times from the imagined pain. And I loved Maud using your grandma's teeth during that funeral scene. I laughed out loud pretty exuberantly when she opened her mouth. That was the sort of like silliness you need in this sort of movie to make it work, right? But overall, I feel the movie is something that will come and go. A neat idea, more interesting showcase of an old monster than, like, let's say, the Wolfman. And I did appreciate it more than a rehashing directly of an ancient story. Now that we're in the era of Eggers digging up all the old monsters and presenting them again, I expect more of these old films to continue to show up. This fits well into the category of Hammer monsters, and I think it's completely competently well made and worth a watch. You just have to have the right expectations. 5.5